This here is the NZXT H9. Looks a bit familiar. I want you to think back to the early days of this channel, back when we built our first custom loop when I was still in college, living in a college dorm room. I put my first custom loop together in the original Lee & Lee PC011. No, not the Dynamic, not the Evo or whatever they're calling it now, the vanilla PC011. That case, while it had a ton of space in it, had a few downfalls, and those were straightened out by the introduction of the PC011 Dynamic a few years later. And that was kind of a tag team effort between Lee & Lee and Der Bauer. Roman made a lot of key changes to that case that made most of us love it, and the price at around 120 or 130 bucks meant it was also relatively affordable compared to the original 011. Now since then, we've had many copycats, for lack of a better phrase. Height released their Y60, their own take on a dual chamber chassis. We have NZXT here, obviously, with their H9. I'm sure there are a few others I'm just not thinking of, but it's, to be fair, a difficult case to reinvent because of the nature of the hardware placement. Basically, you have, instead of the power supply below the motherboard, the power supply behind the motherboard tray. You typically have air intake alongside the motherboard tray rather than at the front of the case, so you can have this large glass panel here, and you still usually retain a decent bit of airflow at the bottom of the chassis as well as up top with a single exhaust, usually at the rear. So the formula has largely stayed the same, but there are small little variables that change from brand to brand, and I think NZXT's take, for the most part, was nailed. There are a few things, though, that weren't. And we're going to talk about all of those attributes in this video while we build in it, because I'm kind of excited to see what we can actually put together in here. It won't be the most expensive, elaborate build ever, but it should give us a good idea of what you'll run into if you happen to buy one for yourself. Are you ready? It's the part where I say, stay with me. Stay with me.
To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key. Purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount.
Can I just say, is this not the coolest right side panel you've ever seen? The perforations everywhere and one large dust filter to ensure dust stays out. This, I think, is my favorite part of the H9. It pretty much means that wherever you place fans, you're gonna have decent airflow, at least along, again, the right side panel. Pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Here's sort of a unique perspective here. You can see the top of this case is made of tempered glass because this is the Elite model. You could swap this with a perforated panel just like you see here if you choose the airflow model. In there you can see, it's actually, I think, acrylic. It's an acrylic 3x120mm fan mount that is removable, and you also get this 2x140mm mount if you want to mount 140s up top instead. Behind and beside the motherboard tray, you can see we've got our 3 included RGB 120mm fans and a plethora of cables that go along with them. Now this door is pretty cool, so you can mount a ton of 2.5-inch drives here, maybe hubs, SSDs, what have you, and the entire panel swings open on hinges, but you can also either mechanically fasten these, you'll have 2 screws you have to remove to start, or you can just let the magnets hold this thing down, and they're actually pretty strong. I don't really see a need to reinstall the screws. Pretty strong as is. The cables in here, we're just gonna, yeah, it comes with the territory. Get a lot of cables, a lot of RGB cables as well. You have a 3.5-inch hard drive cage here. This is where you're gonna mount your power supply, just behind the motherboard. Now, one of the downsides of this is that if you want to, let's say, install some mounting gear for an AIO or a CPU tower cooler, you're not gonna be able to access that once your power supply is installed. Not the end of the world, just know that going into it. You get plenty of Velcro straps running along the edges of the motherboard tray as well. Really cool. And yeah, just all in all, a ton of space here to work with. You can just shove all your cables back here, not really have to worry about cable management if you don't want, because the volume is just so large. Now, I do find it interesting that NZXT decided to stick with their traditional cable bar. I mean, it's pretty much just an NZXT symbol at this point. I think functionally it doesn't do the best job, but you know it's an NZXT case when you see it. And in case you're wondering, here is what the rear of the H9 looks like. You do have these large PCIe covers, and when you remove them, you'll just have one big gaping hole. There aren't rails running across, so you can mount your graphics card vertically without much of a hindrance. You've got your 3.5-inch cage that kind of just hinges into the frame. It looks a little cheesy. I'd like to see it rotated sideways like Lian Li does, so you can access your hard drives from the rear rather than remove your entire right side panel. And then of course your power supply mounts further up there. A few other things worth noting: if you're interested in front panel connections, you've got a Type-C port, 2 Type-A ports, and a unified microphone headphone jack. I really like these fans as well further down. The 3 RGB fans look really clean from both sides. You can see NZXT did a really good job making them look presentable from the frame side of the fan, which is normally pretty ugly, has an ugly sticker or something like that. You can see the cables running from the motor. Just really cleaned them up here and made it to where they can freshly intake air without, looking bad. Now I'm sure you're as anxious as I am. Let's go ahead and start building this thing. By the way, I have no idea what we're gonna throw into it. We're just gonna start pulling out parts and hoping they fit. Nothing like a fresh peel on a fresh motherboard. We're going with a Ryzen 5 7600X, which, well, there's no rhyme or reason to it, like I said, but I haven't built with this CPU before, so it will be cool to experiment just a tad. Gonna lower that, lower the arm, and then yep, there goes the cap. How about some sexy looking Trident Z Neo DDR5? Easy does it. There's one, and there's two. Oh, he's gotta give it a little bit of oomph. There we go. Now I know what you're thinking, Greg, why on earth are you air cooling in a case like this? Well, because I know everybody else will be water cooling, and I don't want to be like everybody else. Think different. I'm also slightly curious if a tower cooler is even going to fit in this case, because there's not a lot of clearance left to right. It looks like it will just fit. Now, oversized air coolers, yeah, you're going to be cutting it super close in a case this, this narrow. And by thick, I obviously don't mean the entire width of the case, because, well, this is much wider than the H5 over there, and it's much wider than an H7, but this section of the case, this part, this chamber, is pretty narrow. And you can see just this smaller tower cooler here barely fits. Now I've finished some basic wiring here, and you can see it's still a rat's nest. I'm gonna wait till we get our power supply in here to, fully straighten all this stuff out. The next thing we need to tackle, let me just pivot the camera here. Yeah, all of these fans, because holy cow, we have a ton of real estate in the case to fill up, and I'm just gonna throw a bunch of fans in there because, well, we're not gonna need radiators just because I'm air cooling. Again, I know, it's unorthodox. I'm trying to be different. I think it is ridiculous that we have to lay this case all the way down on its side to install some intake fans at the bottom, but whatever. And there we are, 6 additional fans installed. We gotta get these cables out of the way. Just drop it on in and tighten down with 2 included thumb screws. By the way, all these panels snap on with ease. This top one is totally toolless. Just push it down, there you go. The power supply is going in next. We're gonna make sure that we have fan side pointing out here, because remember, we have that very large perforated right panel. Locked in tight. And now we cable manage as best we can here without spending an egregious amount of time on it. Again, most of this is gonna be covered anyway by this panel and obviously the perforated right panel, so I'm not gonna, we've just got so much clutter here. It's just, I'm probably just gonna leave most of it. I know that's the lazy way out, but this case makes it so easy to just shove stuff in here that I'm not gonna try too hard.
8 hours later.
Okay, you ready? I'm just gonna show you this. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna show you what's underneath there. It's kind of messy, but you can see how clean it looks with that bar installed. I'm standing right in the light, sorry about that. But overall, really happy. There's still plenty of room in here to shove even more cables. The H9, it looks like, does come with this hub, which is cool. I think this is for the Elite only. I'll put something down here if I'm wrong. But that helps clean things up a bit and allows us to add extra fans without issue. Last major component to install then, our graphics card. And this here is an RTX 2060 Founders Edition. Yes, it is quite old, but befitting of a 7600 build, I think. It's, yeah, we're not going for the most practical build here, obviously. I love the A-pins on the side. One of my favorite looking Founders Edition cards of all time, if I do say so myself. In she goes. And oh yeah, I really like the way this looks with this card. It's a pretty sweet combination. Clipped all the way in. We'll have that cable running along the side here, and we'll be Gucci. People say Gucci anymore? I didn't think so. Now, for reference, we could have installed this card vertically. Again, there are no slot rails at the rear of this case, which means we could throw in, say, a cable mod vertical bracket, a cooler master. I think NZXT actually sells one themselves as well, but it's not included with the case, which kind of sucks. But if we turn the card vertically like this, that would look even better in my view, because you've got 2 front-facing fans here, obviously, from the card, and then also the 3 along the side next to the motherboard tray. That would be the piece de resistance. But for now, I'm just gonna slot it in normally. Also, how was my French? Pretty awful, right? Now we can get this right side panel installed. It just drops in from below and then clips in up top. Effortless, and then just one single thumb screw. It is captive at the rear to tighten things down. And for those curious, here is what the system looks with the left side panel installed. We'll leave it off for the remainder of the video, but I wanted to show you that it is now not as dark as before. So like the H5 that I'm using has, I believe, a darker tint than this. It's actually nice to be able to see what's inside. Thank you, NZXT, for changing that this time around. It is really nice to have a case with seamless corners here where the tempered glass on one panel touches literally the tempered glass from another. So there's no bar here. That does mean that the case, when both panels are removed, is slightly unstable. I'm not the biggest fan of using tempered glass to keep a case structurally sound, but just mind that if you have both these panels off and you're mounting like a super thick radiator up top, you might see some sag, and you just gotta be careful with that. That said, here's what the build looks like from the left, and I've gotta say, I mean, despite us going with like the cheap, easy option, right, just air cooling all around, it still looks pretty darn cool. You can see there is so much room for activities, especially up toward the front here. Even below, you could fit a really thick radiator down there if you wanted, if you're not occupying additional slots on your motherboard. Just all around, I think, a really good use of space. If you're looking for a larger mid-tower, by definition, there's only 7 slots at the rear, but you just want room for custom water cooling or beefier graphics cards, the H9 definitely has you covered. All powered up then, you can see where the NZXT H9 truly shines. In this case, literally and figuratively, the fact that we have both tempered glass front and left panels. And also in the Elite's case, a tempered glass top panel means that you can see RGB shining through wherever they may be. And again, if you want the more airflow-oriented version of this, you can buy that as well. I'll have both variants linked below if you're interested in checking them out. I personally would opt for the airflow variant. I don't really see the utility in having a glass top panel. It just doesn't really do it for me. But I'm sure some people think it looks cool. I mean, especially if you have this case like on the floor or near the floor. And please don't put this on the floor. I'm just gonna say that. Please don't do it. This is a work of art. Don't do that to yourself or to your build. Whoa, hold up here. The Elite variant is $240. Okay, that's more than I thought. I thought there'd be like maybe a $50 premium, because of course you got the RGB fans in here. You've got that more versatile hub at the rear and the glass up top. I mean, those are really the 3 key differences. And that's a pretty big jump in price. A little disappointed there. I wouldn't buy the Elite. I would definitely consider the Airflow variant, and I mean, even the Airflow variant at its price is going to be a tough sell over a tried and true Li and Li equivalent. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this one. I honestly went into this thinking it was around 150, 175 bucks, maybe 200 at the most, but $240? Ouch. That's all I'll say. Ouch. We need to work on that price a little bit. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Give us one a thumbs up if you thought it was cool. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Consider supporting us on Patreon if you wish, and you can also join our public Discord server free of charge there. You can ask your questions, maybe contribute in some other way. That would be greatly appreciated. Oh, what a way to end with this one. All around, was really happy with the case until I saw the price. I'm just not feeling nearly $250 for this. I think I'll stick with an H5, heck, even an H7, or obviously dual chamber competitors like Li and Li's, and the Height Y60 is also out there too. So, yeah. All right, I'll get out of here. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.